The lie had settled over the town like desert dust after a cattle drive, fine and choking, getting into every crack until no one remembered the air before it. Folks repeated it from the barber shop to the church steps, from the train platform to the back pews on Sunday. They said it with calm faces and certain voices, as if truth had finally chosen a side. By the time the sun dipped behind the red hills each evening, the lie felt older than the town itself. Everyone believed it. Everyone except one woman who learned to look closer. Before the story pulls you deeper, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what comes next. This is a story told on Western Love Story, where forgotten roads, old wounds, and dangerous truth still breathe. Stay with it, because what seems simple at first will not remain that way for long. The town sat on the edge of the plains, a place built from weathered wood and stubborn hope. Its main street held a saloon with swinging doors, a general store that smelled of grain and oil, and a sheriff's office that had not seen fresh paint in years. Windmills creaked in the distance, and the railroad tracks cut the land like a scar that never healed. People here trusted what they could see and feared what they could not. That fear made the lie easy to accept. They said the trouble came from the hills. They said it always did. When cattle went missing or fences were cut, when a man vanished on a moonless night, the story spread before facts ever had a chance to breathe. The blame landed where it always landed, on the quiet figure who rode alone. On the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like, muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck. He moved through the land like he belonged to it more than the rest of them ever could, and that alone was enough to make him dangerous in their eyes. His name was Iron Hawk, and he carried it like a burden and a warning. He did not speak much to townsfolk, not because he had nothing to say, but because words had taught him they could be twisted. His long black hair fell down his back like a shadow, and the tribal jewelry around his neck caught the sun when he rode past. The small tribal tattoos on his skin told stories older than the town's church bell. He wore no shirt, not out of pride, but because the heat and the land demanded honesty from the body. People watched him with narrowed eyes, whispering as if he could not hear. He heard everything. The woman noticed the whispers first. She noticed how they changed shape, depending on who spoke them. She was called Blue Willow, a name given by her mother, who believed names were promises. Blue Willow dressed in native clothing stitched by careful hands, soft leather and woven cloth that carried patterns of wind and river. Her hair was braided neatly, and her eyes missed very little. She worked at the general store, measuring flour and sugar, listening more than she spoke. In a town that rushed to judgment, her patience stood out like a lone tree on open land. Blue Willow had learned early that truth often hid in the spaces people ignored. She watched Iron Hawk from a distance at first, the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry. He's always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, riding past the store at the same hour every few days. She noticed how he never looked at the saloon, how his eyes stayed on the horizon. She noticed how children stopped crying when he passed, sensing something calm beneath the strength. These details did not fit the lie everyone loved so dearly. The lie said Iron Hawk was violent. The lie said he was waiting for a chance to strike. The lie said the land would be safer if he vanished. Blue Willow watched men repeat these words while shaking hands and smiling, and she felt a coldness settle in her chest. She had seen real violence. Did not look like quiet restraint or steady eyes. Did not look like a man who helped a broken wagon without asking for thanks. One afternoon, the sheriff nailed a notice to the post outside his office. A reward was offered for information, careful words hiding sharp intent. People gathered, nodding, already convinced. Blue Willow stood at the edge of the crowd, reading every line twice. Something was wrong. Dates did not match. Places were described by those who had never been there. It was a story stitched together by fear and convenience. The town wanted an ending that did not require looking at itself. That night, Blue Willow could not sleep. The wind pressed against her window, carrying distant drumbeats from the hills, steady and alive. She thought of Iron Hawk again, the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry. Always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, standing alone against a world that had already decided who he was. She thought of the way lies grew stronger when left alone. By morning, she knew she could not stay silent. Their paths crossed at the edge of town, where the dirt road gave way to open land. Iron Hawk was repairing a fence, his movements precise and unhurried. Blue Willow approached slowly, her native dress catching the light. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt heavy, filled with everything the town had said for them. When Iron Hawk finally looked up, his eyes held caution, not anger. Blue Willow told him she did not believe the lie. She said it simply, without drama. Iron Hawk studied her face, searching for mockery or pity. Finding neither, he nodded once. He did not thank her. He did not need to. In that small exchange, something shifted, fragile as glass. What Blue Willow did not know yet was how deep the lie ran, or who benefited from it most. She did not know that looking closer would put her in danger, or that the truth carried a price heavier than she imagined. As the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the land, Iron Hawk returned to his work, and Blue Willow turned back toward town, aware that nothing would ever feel the same again. Behind her, the wind changed direction, carrying secrets that refused to stay buried. The town slept easy that night, confident in its false certainty, unaware that one woman's quiet doubt had already begun to unravel everything. Morning came quietly, the kind of quiet that made Blue Willow uneasy. The town woke as it always did, boots on porches, smoke rising from chimneys, horses shifting in their stalls. Yet beneath the routine, something had changed. Whispers carried sharper edges now, and eyes lingered longer when Iron Hawk's name surfaced. Blue Willow felt it as she walked to the general store in her native dress, soft leather brushing her legs, beadwork catching the early light. The lie was no longer resting. It was moving. At the store, men spoke in low voices, while pretending to study shelves. They talked about missing tools, about a rider seen near the river at dusk. Detail bent itself toward the same ending. Blue Willow listened, measuring not sugar this time, but intent. She noticed how the stories did not agree with one another, how places shifted depending on who spoke. Still, no one questioned them. Fear had become easier than thought. Outside, hoofbeats echoed down the street. Iron Hawk passed without slowing, the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry. Always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck. Dust clung to his skin, and the sun traced every line of strength, shaped by labor and survival. People stepped aside as if danger walked beside him. Blue Willow watched their reactions more closely than she watched him. She remembered the first time she heard his name spoken with anger. It had been months ago, after a fire took part of a ranch beyond the hills. No proof was found, but proof was never required. Iron Hawk had been nearby that week, and that was enough. Since then, every misfortune carried his shadow. Blue Willow wondered who had first decided to use him as the answer to all their questions. That afternoon, the sheriff rode out toward the hills with 2 deputies. Their rifles rested easy, too easy. Blue Willow stood in the doorway of the store, her hands clenched in her native shawl. She knew they were not riding to find truth. They were riding to confirm what they already believed. The land watched them go, silent and patient. Blue Willow did not return home when the sun lowered. Instead, she followed the river path, moving carefully through reeds and stone. Her native clothing blended with the earth, colors chosen long before she was born for moments like this. She did not know exactly what she was searching for, only that the truth left marks for those willing to look. Along the bank, she found hoofprints, deeper and wider than Iron Hawk's horse ever made. She touched the ground, feeling the weight behind them. Whoever rode here carried more than supplies. They carried purpose. As night fell, drums echoed faintly from the hills again, steady and calm. Blue Willow reached the edge of a clearing where firelight flickered. Iron Hawk stood there, feeding wood into the flames. The muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck looked carved from shadow and fire. He did not turn when she approached. It heard her steps long before she arrived. She told him about the sheriff's ride, about the tracks by the river. Iron Hawk listened without interrupting. When she finished, he stared into the fire, jaw tight. He said the land was being used against itself. Said someone wanted the town afraid, because fear blinded even honest eyes. Blue Willow felt the weight of his words settled deep. Ironhawk spoke then of his past, not in detail, but enough. He had returned to this land after years away, hoping distance had softened old wounds. Instead, he found them reopened, dressed as justice. The town saw only his strength, his silence, his difference. They did not see the man who remembered every bend in the river, every burial stone hidden by grass. They did not see loyalty when it did not wear familiar clothes. Blue Willow realized then that the lie was older than this season, older than the recent troubles. It was a pattern repeated whenever the town needed a villain. The truth threatened comfort, and comfort was guarded fiercely. She felt a knot of fear twist inside her, but she also felt resolve. Looking closer had already cost her sleep. Soon, it might cost more. The next day, a notice spread through town, passed hand to hand. A meeting was called for the following evening. Justice would be discussed, the sheriff promised. Blue Willow read the words and felt cold. Justice spoken this way meant a decision already made. She watched men sharpen tools and women whisper prayers, all preparing for an ending that felt inevitable. Ironhawk stayed to the edges of the land, watching smoke rise from town, listening to the shift of birds when strangers crossed his path. The muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build. Small tribal tattoos and tribal jewelry around his neck sensed movement where others saw calm. He knew the hills would not protect him forever. Still, he did not run. Running would only feed the lie. Blue Willow spent the hours before the meeting gathering what she could. Fragments of stories, half-remembered details, contradictions that did not fit. She spoke quietly to an old woman near the tracks, to a trader who passed through at odd hours. Each conversation added weight to her growing certainty that someone else stood behind the trouble. Someone skilled at staying unseen. As the sun dipped again, the town gathered under lantern light. Faces glowed with anticipation and fear. Blue Willow stood among them in her native dress, heart pounding, knowing her silence would soon be a choice she could no longer make. Somewhere beyond the circle of light, Ironhawk watched, unseen. The muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like, muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck waiting to see which way the wind would turn. The sheriff stepped forward, clearing his throat. The crowd leaned in. Blue Willow felt the moment stretch, heavy and fragile. Whatever was said next would shape everything that followed. The lanterns flickered, shadows dancing like restless spirits, and the lie, confident and well-fed, stood ready to be spoken once more. The sheriff's voice carried across the gathered crowd, firm and practiced, shaped by years of telling people what they wanted to hear. He spoke of order, of safety, of a town threatened by shadows. Each word landed like a stone dropped into still water. Faces tightened, hands clenched, and murmurs moved through the circle like a low wind. Blue Willow listened carefully, her native dress brushing the dirt, her spine straight despite the weight pressing on her chest. From the edge of the light, Ironhawk watched in silence. The muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like, muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, stood still as stone. Firelight traced the lines of his shoulders and arms, catching the symbols inked into his skin. Read the crowd the way he read weather signs, sensing the shift before the storm. The sheriff did not say Ironhawk's name at first. He spoke around it, describing a threat without shape, letting imagination do the work. That was how the lie grew stronger, fed by what people feared most. When the name finally came, it felt almost gentle, spoken with regret. Blue Willow felt anger rise, sharp and hot, but she held it down. She needed to listen more than speak, at least for now. A man named Stonecutter stepped forward. He was broad, confident, and well-liked. He claimed to have seen Iron Hawk near the river the night supplies went missing. His voice did not shake. Blue Willow noticed how he avoided her eyes, how his story placed Iron Hawk where no one else could confirm. Across the circle, Iron Hawk's jaw tightened, but he did not move. The muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos and tribal jewelry around his neck, understood how easily truth could be drowned by certainty. Blue Willow felt the weight of every glance turning toward her when she finally stepped forward. Her voice was calm, though her heart raced. She asked simple questions. What time had Stonecutter seen him? Which part of the river? How far from the old bridge? The answers came quickly, too quickly. They did not align with the tracks she had seen, nor with the trader's quiet confession about late-night riders carrying heavy loads. A ripple of unease moved through the crowd, small but real. The sheriff interrupted, steering the talk back to safer ground. Doubt was dangerous, he reminded them. The town needed unity. Blue Willow realized then that the conflict was not only about Iron Hawk, it was about control, about who decided what truth looked like. She stepped back, her questions unanswered, her resolve sharpened. Beyond town, Ironhawk moved through the hills, guided by instinct and memory. The muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like, muscular build. Small tribal tattoos and tribal jewelry around his neck followed signs others missed. Broken branches placed too carefully, ashes buried where fires should have been scattered. He knew someone was using the land to frame him, turning familiarity into a weapon. A subplot unfolded quietly among the ranches. Cattle had been sold cheaply to an outsider weeks before the trouble began. Few men had benefited, their debts eased, their silences bought. Blue Willow learned this through careful listening, through kindness offered where suspicion ruled. Each piece added pressure to the lie, but pressure alone would not break it. Lies, she learned, often needed violence to be exposed. Ironhawk encountered Stonecutter near a ravine just before dawn. They did not speak. They did not need to. The tension between them felt like a drawn bow. Stonecutter's hand hovered near his belt, then dropped. Fear flashed across his face, quickly hidden. Ironhawk turned away first, refusing to give the lie what it wanted. The muscular Native American warrior, with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like, muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, carried restraint like armor. Blue Willow sensed the shift before news reached town. Riders passed through at speed. The sheriff doubled patrols. The talk grew louder, angrier. The town felt caged by its own fear. Blue Willow moved through it carefully, her native clothing a quiet reminder of older ways. She spoke with elders who remembered past injustices, who remembered names spoken and erased. Their stories echoed her own doubts. One evening, a shot rang out near the edge of town. No one was hurt, but the sound cracked the fragile calm. Blame settled instantly. The sheriff called for action. Group formed, torches raised, voices hard. Blue Willow stood in their path, heart pounding, knowing this moment would define her. She spoke of evidence of unanswered questions. Some hesitated, others pushed past her. From the hills, Ironhawk watched firelight move like a living thing. The muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like, muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, felt the pull of survival and justice tearing at him. He could flee and live, or he could stay and fight a lie that had already decided his fate. Blue Willow followed the group at a distance, her steps steady despite fear. She knew the truth was close, close enough to cut. Somewhere in the darkness, someone else watched too, satisfied that the town was tearing itself apart. The conflict deepened, spreading roots into every corner of the land. As torches climbed the hill, shadows stretched long and distorted. The wind carried the scent of smoke and something darker. Blue Willow tightened her shawl, whispering a prayer older than the town. Ahead, Ironhawk stepped into the open, visible now, undeniable. The muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, stood his ground as the crowd closed in. No one spoke. The moment hung heavy, balanced between truth and destruction. Somewhere the real culprit waited, confident the lie would finish its work. Blue Willow felt the tension coiled tighter, knowing the next choice made would echo far beyond this night. The night hung heavy over the town, lanterns flickering against walls, casting shadows that seemed too alive. The crowd paused on the hill, voices hushed, hearts caught between fear and curiosity. Blue Willow stepped forward, her native dress swaying gently, the patterns catching the firelight. She met Ironhawk's gaze, the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck. There was no anger in his eyes, only a quiet strength that demanded attention. She spoke first, calmly, clearly, reminding the townsfolk of what they had ignored: the tracks by the river, the late-night riders, the hidden sales of cattle that no one had questioned. She spoke of inconsistencies, of small details that contradicted the story they had all believed. Slowly, murmurs rose, not of disbelief, but of recognition. People began to see the edges of the lie, the cracks that fear had hidden. The sheriff, caught in his own web, shifted uneasily. Stonecutter, standing near the crowd, could no longer maintain the certainty he had projected. Blue Willow continued, her voice unwavering. She named names, traced actions, pointed out the real manipulator, the outsider who had bought cattle cheaply, stoked fear, and watched the town turn on itself. The crowd's anger shifted, once aimed at Ironhawk, now searching for the one who had played them all. Ironhawk stepped closer, the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit model-like muscular build. Small tribal tattoos and tribal jewelry around his neck, moving with a quiet grace that silenced even the most stubborn voices. He did not need to speak. His presence confirmed Blue Willow's words. The town, for the first time, looked beyond the familiar lie and began to see truth. Stonecutter's face flushed with guilt, realizing the part he had played. The sheriff swallowed hard, admitting he had ignored certain signs for the sake of order, afraid of rocking the fragile balance. Blue Willow met his gaze with steady eyes, letting him know that courage sometimes demanded facing uncomfortable truths. The manipulator, sensing his control slipping, tried to flee, but the townsfolk, finally aware and united, stopped him before he could vanish. Justice, tempered by clarity and fairness, would follow. As the tension lifted, the night felt lighter. Lanterns glowed with warmth rather than suspicion. People whispered apologies both to Ironhawk and to one another. They had believed a lie and now faced their mistake. Ironhawk, the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like, muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, did not demand thanks. His strength was measured not in confrontation, but in the patience that had allowed truth to emerge. Blue Willow walked beside him as they descended the hill, her native dress brushing the grass, her eyes reflecting relief and hope. They did not speak much, words unnecessary after nights of silence, observation, and quiet courage. In their shared understanding, the bond grew stronger, respect earned not from admiration alone, but from recognizing the weight each had carried alone. The subplots also found resolution. The stolen cattle were returned, the outsider held accountable, and the families affected by fear and lies began to rebuild. Trust, fragile but resilient, took root once more in the town streets. Blue Willow and Ironhawk did not rush to celebrate. They knew the past's shadow would linger, but now the town understood the importance of looking closer, questioning what seemed obvious, and standing firm when truth demanded it. The next morning, as sunlight broke over the red hills, the town stirred with renewed purpose. Children laughed along the riverbank, echoing the freedom that comes after fear is lifted. Merchants reopened stalls with cautious optimism. Blue Willow walked through the streets, her native clothing blending with familiar patterns, yet standing out because of her quiet bravery. Every nod and smile she received reminded her that courage could inspire change even in a town long bound by lies. Ironhawk returned to his usual paths beyond the hills, the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit model-like, muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, moving like part of the land itself. He checked fences, guided lost animals, and remained a watchful presence. Not out of fear of the town, but because he understood the delicate balance between vigilance and trust. The town had learned that appearances could deceive, but also that integrity and patience held power stronger than fear. Blue Willow and Ironhawk met often by the river, speaking little, observing much. In their quiet moments they found comfort and understanding, a recognition that sometimes the strongest words are those left unspoken. Her native dress and his tribal jewelry became symbols not just of identity, but of resilience, of standing firm when others faltered. Months passed, and the town settled into a new rhythm. Stories of the lie became lessons, told around fires and at the general store. People spoke of Ironhawk, not with suspicion, but with respect for the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, who carried himself with dignity and patience. They spoke of Blue Willow, her native dress, a reminder that careful observation and courage could change hearts. At dusk, the hills glowed with a golden light that seemed almost sacred. Blue Willow stood on a ridge, looking out at the town and the plains beyond. Ironhawk approached, silent as the wind, the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck joining her. They did not speak, because none was needed. The world was quiet, balanced, and hopeful. The key lesson lingered in every corner of the town, that truth matters, that fear is a poor guide, and that those willing to look closer often carry the power to change everything.
Oh.
The lie that had once defined them no longer held sway. The bonds forged through observation, courage, and patience promised a future where honesty, respect, and understanding could grow. Blue Willow smiled softly, her eyes tracing the horizon. The wind carried stories of old, reminders of challenges faced and lessons learned. Ironhawk stood beside her, the muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, embodying the strength of a land and people intertwined. Together, they watched the town breathe, free from the shadow of fear, ready to face whatever came next. In the end, the town had learned to see, to listen, and to question. They had learned that courage often came quietly, in native dresses brushing the dirt, and in steady eyes that refused to bow to pressure. They had learned that true strength was not in accusation or fear, but in patience, understanding, and the willingness to stand when others faltered. As night fell over the plains, the firelight from the town's windows shimmered against the hills. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying hope, peace, and promise. Blue Willow and Ironhawk remained together, symbols of resilience and courage. Proof that truth, when sought with care, always finds a way to shine. The town slept easier now, the lie finally unraveled, replaced by lessons that would last for generations.
Ow!
And as the stars glimmered above, Blue Willow in her native dress, and Ironhawk, the muscular Native American warrior, with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless, with a fit, model-like muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, stood side by side.
Always.
Knowing that in a world too quick to believe, sometimes looking closer could change everything. This was the story the channel Western Love Story would tell for years, a tale of patience, courage, and the quiet power of observing closely. It would remind everyone that even in fear, even in lies, truth waits for those brave enough to see it. The town had been tested, and through the courage of a woman who looked closer and a warrior who stood his ground, it had survived stronger, wiser, and ready to face the dawn with open eyes.